This is Starting Point, a podcast that tracks Guyana's unprecedented growth from all vantage points. Join your hosts, Kiana Wilberg and Fariza Hanif, as they dive deep into the heart of topical issues.
Welcome to this week's episode of Starting Point. I am your host, Kiana Wilberg, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ms. Fariza Hanif. Today, we have the honor of welcoming our first female guest. She is a very distinguished person as well. She's the former PNCR Executive Member and Youth Leader, as well as attorney at law, Ms. Thandi McAllister. Thandi, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Kiana, and thank you, Fariza, for having me. I feel very privileged and honored to be so warmly introduced. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Indeed. So, Thandi, as I noted in my very brief introduction of you, you have a very distinguished career that you're leading, and some Guyanese may not know, but you are actually serving as Guyana's permanent representative to the International Maritime Organization, along with the many other hats that you're wearing. But before we get into that aspect of your life, I want to hone in a bit on your political persona. It's something that you have been shaping for the last 25 years. And we want to know how that all started, how you shaped that over the years, and who are some of the influencers of that part of yourself.
Right, quite a loaded question. I say quite a loaded request. I have not tapped into my political persona a lot recently, but you are right. I was immersed in politics for quite a long time, more than 24 years. I started out as the treasurer of the IFLUT group of the Guyana Youth and Student Movement in the early 90s. I recall when that group was formed, it was during the late Comrade Hoyt's tenure as leader of the PNCR, and just out of the 1992 elections. And the PNC, as it were then, through the GYSM, was on an active recruitment drive, trying to garner support from as much young people as possible. And so when the caravan, we could say, got to IFLUT, I was introduced to the members of that team. And what they said piqued my interest. I guess it did help too that for me, it was sort of a continuum of the McAllister's legacy in the PNC. And so...
Because there are familial ties there.
Yes. Right. At one point, I was labeled as a lost McAllister in the PNC, but that's not so. My Uncle James is quite very active still. So I started out as a young member of the GYSM, as treasurer of the group at IFLUT, and then moved up the ranks. I was elected to the regional executive body of the GYSM, Region 3. I'm a Region 3 girl, born and bred, love it there. The air is fresher.
For sure, I can attest to that.
And a lot of my political grounding was through fieldwork and interaction with the people. So my orientation in the political arena through the People's National Congress was one that saw the party through its youth arm engaging constantly with its base and the wider electorate. So,
quite a long journey.
Yes, it has been quite a long journey, quite an impactful journey. I've met a lot of persons over the years, interesting personalities. In fact, one of my closest friends, he's now passed, Bevan Curry, I met through the GYSM. And over the years, we developed a very good relationship. He was my brother. I learned a lot from him and others, Artie Ricknott, Cheryl Sampson, who is also from Iflat. And
the entire Sampson family.
no,
No?
Cheryl Sampson.
Sampson.
Cheryl Sampson is a
Okay.
political activist.
Okay.
And she's quite revered in the community, very well respected and respectful as well. So, over the years, these are some of the people who would have shaped not only my political journey, but my interest in politics. Yeah. And so, there were times when I was not holding any position, just a member of the party and still working. I've worked at every election since 97.
Wow.
I recall
Okay.
in 1997 being left at the polling station. That was a funny thing.
Wow.
Being left at the polling station, it was only me and the security guard at the time. He said, like, they forget you. I'm like, no, they're coming. They're coming. They have other persons to pick up, to take home. But it turned out that they did forget me. So when eventually perhaps somebody said, hey, where's Thandi?
Yeah.
Then they remembered that I was at Leonora Primary. And somebody came and collected me. I was happy. That was an experience and a half. I loved it. And it taught me, that experience, I wanted to zone in on that a little. That experience taught me or reinforced one of the things that we learned early in the PNC is that when it comes to politics and governance of the country, your political opponent is just that. Your political opponent. You're not enemies.
Mhm.
That's a very interesting
Yes.
perspective there.
And that is
Yeah.
one of the things I try to pass on to young people as they, over the years would have joined the PNC. Your political opponent is only your political opponent. It's not your enemy. We are not enemies because ultimately we all want the same thing.
Correct.
To work in the best interest of Guyana and the Guyanese people.
Mhm. Quite a journey, Thandi.
Right.
Mhm.
It has been
Yeah.
a journey that culminated with me being elected to the central executive of the
Mhm.
party, having served as party chairman in the region.
Mhm.
Yes. But before I became party chairman, I was elected regional representative to the Central Executive Committee and then party chair. And ultimately, eventually, I was elected as a member of the Central Executive Committee. And so when I left the PNCR, that is the position in which I served. It has been quite a learning experience. Politics is an interesting
Dynamic.
in Guyana, yes, interesting dynamic. But you build relationships within your party and across the fence as well. So, like I said, your political opponent, not your enemy. So, while we served in the PNC and in the GYSM, we had friends and comrades in the PYO and in the PPP. And we still do. Well, I can't speak for the party now, but I'm quite certain that the older members of the PNCR are still, there's still some sort of relationship, some connection with members of the ruling PPPC.
Yeah, you've worked your way up the ranks, you gained the experience, you became a valuable member of the PNC. And before we had all of these crossovers, as you've been seeing recently,
Yes.
you were probably among the first to have crossed over. About 4 years ago, June 2021 to be
June
exact.
2021.
Yeah.
Oh, you've keeping
Yes.
tabs, Marisa.
And what prompted this? Because you were so engrossed with the people, you learned so PNC, sorry, you've learned so much. But what prompted this decision? And did it cause any fallout with your family? Because they were rooted and they still are in the PNCR.
Like I said, political opponents, not enemies. And my family is my family, is my family. And we understand how politics work. We understand the dynamics and we respect choices. So there was no fallout.
That's good.
There was none.
That's good.
In fact, there was the reassurance that we will continue to love you And where we think that you needed to be protected, we will be there to shield you, to protect you, and we will root for you.
Wow, that's
That's
family.
That's
Wow.
family.
But what
Okay.
prompted the move?
It was a very long and hard decision. So
How long?
that long.
But did you think about it for what, like a year?
More than a year. When I campaigned for the PNCR in 2020, for the APNU, actually, the coalition in 2020, at that point, I was campaigning out of loyalty to the party I had come to love.
And not because you were really feeling it.
No. There, at some point between 2015 and 2017, there was a feeling of a lack of inclusion of the youth.
Wow.
And there were efforts to bridge that gap. Young people, we recognized that, there was this non-inclusion of our role in governance. And this is what we worked for. The party campaigned on the inclusion of youth and on the importance of the youth vote and the youth voice.
Yes.
And so when that voice was muzzled within the party, persons did speak up. We did speak up.
Including yourself.
Of course.
Okay.
I have my comrades who would love to say, girl, you are dramatic. I have a dramatic pencil drop. So
Don't we all?
And so I recall at one meeting, we were advocating for a greater inclusion of young people in the system of governance, a greater inclusion of young people in the party, and in fact, a prioritization of the rebuilding of the Guyana youth and student movement. And at some point, we felt that we were not being heard, and enough was not being done
For the youth.
Wow.
And there isn't much that you can do when you are seen by young people as an influencer, somebody who is there to represent their interest, and you cannot say to them, I do not yield the influence or the measure of influence you think I do.
Wow.
Because there is a part of you that says you have to represent the best interest of the party. And so you want to protect the party and the party's image. Because we still want to grow the party. We still want to attract young, bright minds to the party. But I don't think the party did enough to retain the young, bright minds it had then.
But that must have been heartbreaking to watch, because the Granger campaign was about providing jobs for youths, ensuring that youths had a place in government as well, as you noted. And then to see all of that just coming to the fore as a ruse, and given your political background as well, how you shaped your persona, how you started to shape your persona, that must have been a heartbreaking thing to see.
It was a heartbreaking thing to experience.
I understand.
And so the decision, like I said, it was not an easy one, but it is one that I had to make.
But Thandi, before we get to jumping ship and going across to the PPP, we've seen the reemergence of former President David Granger now saying that youths should not listen to rhetoric and empty promises, and they should be mindful of the parties that they vote for. How do you feel seeing recent commentary, given what you experienced, the heartbreak that you experienced?
I
Should youths
believe
believe it?
that Granger's utterances perhaps would have held more weight if he had lived those words while he was president and while he had the opportunity to demonstrate to youth that we are important. Regrettably, he did not. Regrettably, what we saw was a geriatric movement. And it is that movement, in my most humble opinion, that has him where he is now. Out of office, a former president, fighting for a voice, fighting to be heard, like we fought to be heard, while he was at the helm, and the PNCR out of government.
You mentioned earlier that the campaign trail in 2020, you were doing
Exciting
it
times.
out of loyalty. But there was a one point in time, I think it was in January 2020, you said that the APNU has done more for Guyana in 4 years than the PPP has done 23 years. Is that how you truly felt, or were you just politicking, or you did that out of loyalty, as you mentioned?
The dynamics are very interesting.
Like you said, politics is a very dynamic thing in this country.
But when you are campaigning and these are your interests, you want to advance your interests. And you advance your interests based on your truth.
Let's unpack
And
that.
you
that
felt, you feel connected to the
Mhm.
cause.
Mm-hmm.
So connected that you want to stay the course because you believe that somewhere in there is still hope.
Yeah.
That things will change. And you have comrades and colleagues who believe the same as you do. You're grounded in the same philosophy. And maybe the geriatrics will move on and, just resign to a position where they provide guidance because experience, as we know, is important.
Yes.
It comes with age.
Mhm.
Wisdom necessarily does not follow age,
Right.
but experience
Yes.
should.
Yes.
But there's still that hope that one day the youth, that component, will take the reins, and perhaps things will change.
Was that the truth you were holding on to?
That was the truth I was holding on to.
But your
Okay.
hopes were squashed after
Yeah, because
2020 and we saw what happened.
right, the elections came. There was a loss. Government change. The PNCR, the APNU, is now in opposition, and nothing changed. The status quo in that party remained. The matter of the lack of inclusion persisted. You would think that with a loss as dramatic as that one, that there would be a shift in the thought processes. Perhaps going back to the drawing board, as we say. A difference in the way in which we operate. But no, the status quo remained. And that is not a movement. If you are serious about your own personal development and growth, the growth of the people who look up to you, the development of the young people, and the development of this country, that is not a movement with which you still want to be aligned. And as I said, the decision to leave was not taken, well, it was made in 2021, but that process was well on its way before 2020.
Tanda, I know we spoke a lot or extensively rather on the feelings of the PNC and the entire APNU cabal regarding youth and their involvement. But another major issue that we've seen raised over the past few weeks is this failure of the PNC to address 5 years on the claim that it won the 2020 elections and it was cheated out of this and it has the SOPs to prove so. What were your thoughts on this, watching this unfold?
Well, let me say this. I stayed away from the recount process because I was vocal about, I was against the recount process. The only SOPs that I have seen and that I can speak to are the SOPs that emanated from Region 3.
That's fair.
And if I recall well, I think we made credible inroads. We increased our votes by I think it's 25% thereabout. And so, I did not support the recount process. I did not present myself at the recount.
Why?
And those were...
Why didn't you support it?
Because I did not believe that it was a process that was necessary.
Because you felt
if we lost, we lost. If we
Okay.
won, we won. Declare the results.
And did you think that the PNC lost? Or APNU AFC lost at that time?
At that time, it wasn't a party that behaved as if it had won. It had won.
Okay.
That's fair.
At
That's
least not
fair.
convincingly so. But like I said, I had long ago then resigned my efforts and thoughts from the party and its political work.
You'd given up, basically.
When I handed in those SOPs, I went home and I said to my mother and my sister, who I share a household with, that I'm done. This is it.
Tandai, how do you feel about the PNC, the Aubrey Norton-led PNC, continuing this form of self-deception regarding the elections, the 2020 elections, and still advancing this false hope? Can such a party be trusted? What is your message to Guyana's youth as they head to the poll regarding this issue?
I have comrades in the PNC, and I respect them for staying that course. They are still convinced that they are doing the right thing, perhaps for themselves, for the party, and for the country. I respect that. What I would say, though, is that I have, over the years, since 2020, recognized, having been exposed to His Excellency Irfaan Ali and his philosophy of wanting what's good and best for Guyana, and observing how much he has put into this presidency and how much he continues to sacrifice to ensure the transformational development we are all witnessing. That a vote in Guyana's best interest is a vote for the PPPC and to re-elect Irfaan Ali as president of this cooperative republic.
On the campaign trail in 2020, you noted in not so many words that President Ali was your political opponent. How do you feel now? I know you said, even at a recent community outreach, that the electorate should trust him. Why?
Because of what
Given
I
your
just
given your
outlined.
given your previous stance,
Right. He was my political opponent. He was not my enemy.
and you see him as
He
the
was then my brother and friend.
Mhm.
He still is my brother and friend. We're closer now. We're on the same side. I'm on his side. He's on mine. We walk side by side, and we're walking side by side to victory come September 1.
Mhm. You spoke
Okay.
about his philosophy, his plans, and
Mhm.
that's what drew
Yes.
you to the
Yes.
party.
And, even he had meetings in Region 3 yesterday, and I attended a few of those after work. And to listen to him not only passionately outline his plans for this country, but we have witnessed how, with that same passion, he has brought to fruition the plans he outlined previously. And I will tell you this, I started out as a skeptic. I did. And I'm happy that I was pleasantly put to my place.
Yeah.
Like, girl, open your eyes and be honest with yourself. He is doing a fantastic job. And it's not because we're of the same era or we're from the same region that I'm going to sit here and say, hey, he deserves a second term. His work speaks for itself.
How would you describe the last 4 years under the president? Last 5 years, rather.
4 years plus, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been quite a rewarding journey and quite an interesting journey for Guyana. We have seen the vast development. This country is moving apace, and I am happy that he's been able to steer this ship right. Yes, there have been storms and there will be storms. But he's been able to steer this ship right. And I think it's because, too, he has very good support, and he has very strong shoulders to lean on. And I'm talking about the VP here.
Yes.
The VP, yes, and the Prime Minister. And in fact, if you look at how his cabinet works, it's a reflection of who he is.
They have to be out there.
Yes.
They have to.
And grounding
around.
with the people is very important. You cannot be president and be aloft.
Who are we alluding to here?
Who are we
Is there
alluding to?
comparison?
Not
Who are we-
Irfaan.
who are we
Not
alluding
Irfaan.
to?
We can see the difference between His Excellency now
Mhm.
and his predecessor.
Right.
You cannot lose that connection with the people.
You'd
You
say that's one
cannot
of the failings
lose
of the
that
Granger.
connection with your base.
Mhm.
And yes, he has to wear that as a badge of dishonor.
Granger.
He lost touch
Mhm.
with the base.
Do you think, based on all that you've said, you're being convinced by what the Irfaan Ali-led administration has been able to do in terms of transformation and development? Do you think the Norton Jurita ticket stands a chance to fill his shoes?
Well, I don't know what that ticket looks like, because the ticket is not just the presidential and prime ministerial candidate. It's your full list
Correct.
of
course.
candidates. That full component. I don't know what it looks like. I haven't seen it. But I know what I see and experience now. Perhaps the PNC in 1998 or PNC in the early 2000s stood a chance. That's a PNC that had Faith Arden and Archie Ricknott and so on, and Raphael Trotman perhaps, and that PNC reform component, a Derek Bernard, perhaps a PNC of that ilk.
Not this
with
former
a James McAllister,
shell.
would have stood a chance, but not this PNC.
Yeah.
This PNC is a shadow of its former self.
Wow.
It has, though, an opportunity
Mhm.
after September 1st to go back to the drawing board, to regroup, to rebuild, to rebrand. And in the interest of any good democracy, I hope it does that.
Right.
What role do you see yourself playing in a PUP government?
I love what I do now.
On the ground, engaging with youth.
I love what I do. On the ground, engaging with people. I'm no longer so much a youth.
But Thanda, you
I
do
love
look
the
it.
maritime sector. I love the. Well, thank you. I'm not gonna let that one slip by. Thank you so much. It must be that fresh air in Region 3.
Yes.
I love the maritime sector. It has grown tremendously over the years, and it's on a good path. And I would love to continue to help steer this particular ship. So, in terms of playing an active role in any government, no, that's not my objective. My objective, as it is now, is to aid the re-election of my friend and brother. And
So
you are going to
helping-
help me do that.
That's very refreshing to hear, and to know that I have a
Yes.
sister in Region 3 to share in this development as well. You know, Region 3 is now going to be the new capital, you want to say?
Are you moving back?
You got to put me on the spot.
Are you moving
I'm
back?
thinking about it. Once the new bridge is finished,
So,
it's game.
August 2nd,
Mhm.
I should see you coming with your canter.
Hmm.
To Metro Resort.
Probably with some cows in the back, for sure.
I hear you.
For sure. For sure.
Well, Tandai, this has been such an enlightening experience. We can agree. We've learned so much about the magic that you do behind the scenes and how you've built your political persona. And it was such a pleasure to hear about your experiences and how you continue to lead a distinguished academic career, how you lead in the maritime sector, and how you will now take a new chapter with the PPP. And we look forward to seeing great things from you. So thanks again for participating in today's podcast session.
Well,
so
thank you,
much.
Kiana, and thank you, Fariza. And I look forward to welcoming you back home come August 2nd. But thank you so much. This has been quite a pleasure.
Thank you as well. To our audience, thank you as well. We hope that this experience has been as enlightening for you as it was for us. So please continue to follow us and share this podcast if you found it enlightening. Do join us next week as we bring you more thought leadership from persons within our political landscape and further afield. Take care.
Thanks for watching Starting Point. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for critical updates and exclusive content.